Geometric Transformations. This is a digital lesson, and this is the Christmas version. And this is going to teach students the four transformations of reflection, translation, dilation, and rotation around the origin. So the lesson starts with the definition of what transformation means. It means a change, and then the definition in mathematics. Then the students have a definition of each of the four different types of transformations. And they can refer back to slide 3 if they need a reminder of what each one of these mean. And they're going to start with reflection. So this is a lot of fun for the students. They're going to use the fill color feature of Google Slides to show a reflection, in this case across the y-axis. So we're going to use this same shape, and they're just going to click and hold in the square they want to color, and they can glide across until they get a rectangle. Come up here to the fill color feature, and they can choose any color they like. Again, scroll across, and it needs to be a mirror image, equal distance from the y-axis. The next one is a T shape, and again we're going to reflect across the y-axis going the other direction. So students are just going to click and hold in the square they want to color, glide across, come up here to the fill color feature, choose any color, and here they will get a mirror image across the y-axis. Now the next slide has that same T shape, but this time they're going to reflect across the x-axis. So it's going to look a little bit different. Scroll across, fill it in with a color, and there we have the reflection across the x-axis. So they've got some more. This one actually is a reflection across the line x equals 1. So it has to be over here to the right, equal distance from this line x equals 1. Then they're going to be reflecting across the line y equals negative 1. So it has to be equal distance from this line and below. Then the students are shown what to do if part of their figure is across the line that they're reflecting across. So here I show 2 points. This kind of acts like a hinge. So they're just going to move this figure straight up, and it's going to look like this. Students are going to try then one on their own, reflecting across this line. Then we're going to move on to translation. So translation, it just moves a figure up, down, left, or right without changing its orientation. So the first one's pretty simple. We're just going to translate this figure 6 units to the right. So they're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They can highlight the whole thing and then fill it in with a color. The next one's a little bit more difficult. This one they're going to move 4 units to the left and then 2 units down. So they've got to count very carefully. This one they're going to move up 6 units to the right and then 4 units up. And do the same thing on this figure. Then we're going to move on to rotation. Now this time they're not going to use the fill color feature. They're going to use these lines and points. So we're rotating around the origin, and they're going to use this formula here, negative yx. So they're going to take each one of these points, and they're going to use this formula to, in this case, rotate counterclockwise 90 degrees. That means we're rotating around this point, but it's going to now be in quadrant 3. So I start with the first point, negative 1, 2. Using this formula, it will now be negative 2, negative 1. So we're going to move this point, click and hold, and you can move it where you like. Then negative 3, 2 will now be negative 2, negative 3. And the point negative 1, 4 will now be -4, -1. And then they've got some lines just to fill in their figure. And now they've rotated this triangle around the y-axis, 90 degrees counterclockwise. The next slide, this time they're going to be moving clockwise 90 degrees. So using this formula, it's a little bit different, y negative x for each of these 3 points. And if we move it clockwise, it will again be in quadrant 3. This time they're going to, when we get to slide 17, we're going to rotate 180 degrees using the formula negative x, negative y. So you just change the sign. So here we have -1, 2, and it's going to be across the opposite, 180 degrees into the opposite quadrant 4. So -1, 2 will now be 1, -2. Just change the sign of each of the coordinates. -1, 4 will now be 1, -4. And -3, 1 will now be 3, -1. If you want more of a challenge for the students, you have students that need more of a challenge, you can move each of these and just make them 3 straight lines so the students have to move them around, change their orientation. So they just click on the blue circle and they can move it. They can make it shorter, they can make it longer. So if you want to do that, then I would straighten out all of these pieces. Let the students figure out where they go. Okay, and then on the final slide for rotation, students are going to be showing 3 different rotations. So they're going to have this triangle shown in each of the quadrants, and just see what that looks like. So up here we have the formula for each one. They're going to be starting with these green points, and they're going to be making 3 different rotations. Then they're going to move on to dilation. So dilation is changing a figure by a scale factor. So its shape will stay the same, but its size will either become larger or smaller. So here with a scale factor of 2, we're going to take each one of these points and multiply the coordinates by 2. So we would now have a larger figure that's going to be, instead of 1, 1, it will be 2, 2. And -2, 2, -2, -2, and so on. Now they have a triangle. Again, they're going to take coordinates of each of the points. This time it's a scale factor of 3, so they have to multiply the coordinates by 3. And they're going to move the points into place and then use these 3 pieces to complete their triangle. Now when there's a scale factor and it's a fraction less than 1, that means the figure is now going to be smaller. So you want to take the coordinates of each point and divide by 2. Now we have a figure, we're going to use 2 different transformations on the same figure. So they're going to translate this figure 5 units to the left, and then they're going to reflect it over the x-axis. The final slide has the drag and drop vocabulary. So it's just the 4 transformations, and they're going to place these by clicking and holding, place these in the correct place in the sentence frames. Just a good review for what each of these means. So that is a digital lesson on geometric transformations, the Christmas version.